something that I thought I told you that my tree teacher had went to jail.
No, you did not tell me this. You did not tell me that.
No, it's not funny. But we was going strong, and then he got into some trouble. And we were gonna try to keep it going after he got out, but then was like, you know what? You're not reliable. And so that was like kind of the end of my tree journey of learning the language in Ghana since I'm in Ghana. So that kind of put that on hold. It's no excuse, but that's why I'm not learning.
I mean,
the
it is an
language at the
excuse.
moment.
Your instructor can't instruct.
Yeah, he couldn't instruct. Poor guy ran into some, I don't know, financial. I don't give me the line or exactly what it was, but that's what happened. Oh yeah, went to jail.
No,
and first my friend was the person who was hosting. It was like, I think he's lying, and then she was like, she like went and did some research. She was like, no, he indeed went to jail, and it's unfortunate. So we had to end our lessons. We were on the road. That's what happened.
we were on the road. Dang. Well, I hate to hear that for that man. Dang.
Sorry for that man.
Sorry for that man. He's out though, right?
I believe he is. Yeah, we just couldn't go with him because it was like we needed something reliable, and it just wasn't, worth it.
Well, he might not go back again.
He might not, but we have to do what we have to do.
She said one and done. You get locked up one time, it's over.
That was my choice. But anywho, we can go ahead and
well, I mean, we got that out the way. I definitely want to dive in more because we haven't spoke since it's been a month, and a lot has happened in a month. But welcome to Black Around the World, a space devoted to having conversation that connect, enlighten, heal, and build community amongst Black people globally, if I can say the word. I'm Queen.
I'm Ray. I'm Miss Ray. I'm Miss Ray. I'm Miss Ray. I'm a ray of sunshine.
Oh yes, all of it. I love it. A ray of sunshine. I forgot about that. That's
Ray.
It's a good little Instagram name. Ray of sunshine.
What? Ray of sunshine. I'm sure it exists.
Probably. You'd have to put a whole bunch of weird numbers at the end of it or something to make it unique. What have you been up to? It's been a month. It's been a month. A little over a month, right? I don't remember that
since we spoke.
Yeah.
Time be timing, and life be lifing, and I'm in beach day gear, so I just grateful that I'm able to go to the beach on a Sunday. That's what I did today. But it was hard to like pry myself off the beach, and I was like, dang, I could really just sit out here a little longer. But I ended up coming because I had responsibilities to fulfill and definitely wanted to have this conversation. But yes, I'm in beach day gear. But that
would have been a vibe.
I know it just would have been too loud and too chaotic to have y'all wouldn't have been able to hear nothing. It's music and all the things going on. But like I said, life has been lifing. This past month, it just feels like I'm just experiencing that, not feels, but I know that I'm experiencing the ebbs and the flows of life, ups and downs. I'm just like feeling them, and it just feels like I'm also really seeing myself in this stage, in this season of my life, like really seeing like who I am and how I'm relating to people. So I'm excited to have this conversation because for me, it's like about like responsibility that I'm needing to take and the self-awareness that I'm needing to like have. And because I really be like, I be thinking I'm perfect. Like, not gonna lie, like I do be like feeling like I have my shit together, but like this is like a moment where like, whoa, you don't, girl. Like you really don't. Like, and so I'm just really like seeing myself on new levels for the first time. Also, still trying to extend myself grace, but it's been, I'm grateful to be able to see myself, because I also fear not seeing myself, if that makes sense. Like, I've seen people who are like, oh, they just really are not aware. They really lack self-awareness. And I'm like, oh my God, could that be me? Could that ever be me? So sometimes I have that fear, but I'm grateful that I'm like starting to see myself. That's really my life update. It's just the ebbs and flows of life. Yeah.
Well, you brought it to my attention that healing isn't like a one thing. It's like a continuous journey. So I think, when you take in consideration the eclipse and everything, I mean, I'm into that type of stuff. If you take in consideration the eclipse, what's coming out and what's coming in, we're gonna have a lot of aha moments. I know I have. So I get it. Trust me, I get it. Hopefully you got some video of the beach though, because I do want to see what that vibe looks like in Ghana.
Yeah, I'll send you some, the Laboma Beach. I have to, when we bring Erica into the conversation, see what her favorite Ghana beach is. But that's my go-to Accra beach. But how are things with you, Queen? What's going on with you?
It feels like I got so much going on that I don't even know where to start. It's a whole episode within itself. But all in all, it's been great. I've been working. MacArthur's in school. Football season just ended, so I've been doing that. Our little friend whose house I recorded at the last time, he's no longer in the picture. Thank God. Round of applause.
Oh, look at that.
Round of applause. We need the buttons to have the applause.
Right.
Yeah, that had been a whole ebb and flow within itself. But
yeah,
all in all, the career is great. I'm just really trying to a living situation in order. I feel like I've been here for a year, but I'm still readjusting to what life in Texas feels like. And trying to get a social security card, trying to get a driver's license. That has been a whole thing. So I feel like this is going to be my moment of just relaxation, therapy. Every time we get on a call with someone, it really just allows me to just sit in myself for a minute, with myself, in myself, whatever, and just like reflect on probably the things that I need to talk about but haven't. But yeah,
I love that for you. I'm glad that we could provide that space for each other in this podcast. So even if don't nobody be listening, like we are getting the things out of it. And so I just want to bring Erica in to the conversation. Erica, how are you? How's it going? Where in the world are you?
Hi, ladies. It's going good. I'm in Uganda. I'm in Kampala. It's super late here. And I'm going to go ahead and out myself and apologize in advance. Where I'm staying has 2 dogs, not 1, but 2. And they all of a sudden just got real chirpy. And so I hope they stay calm. Right now, they're not barking. I hope it stays this way the duration of this recording. But if not, we just gonna call it a little bit of pepper. They just sprinkling in a little bit of this African environment, and it is what it is.
It is totally okay. Yeah, sound effects.
Yes. We'll ebb and flow with the sound effects. But thank you for making time during your trip to Uganda.
There we go.
You and I met in Ghana, so grateful for that connection back in 2022, I believe. You did a workshop for the Girl Trek event, and that's how we got connected. Do you remember what that workshop was on? It was for a women's event.
Yes, that workshop was on attachment style.
Accra was Women's History Month, I believe. Yeah.
Attachment style, you say?
Yep, it was my part of the event was around attachment styles. Yeah, how does our childhood end up influencing how we show up in relationships, and how do you show up in relationships end up influencing the words you use in relationships and expectations you have out of relationship, and all of that equals attachment.
So we're gonna be right back in there then.
Right.
Okay,
I didn't realize that. I was working the whole thing, so I didn't get to listen. I was like, can I just like take a break and go listen to what Erica's saying? I knew it was going to be good, but I was working the event, and that sounds so good. I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm glad you're here full circle to be able to kind of touch on some of those things as we are, looking forward to talking about those things. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, before we dive in, I just want to give you a moment to, I guess, introduce yourself and tell the people who you are and about your work.
So, hey everyone, my name is Erica Daniel. I am a certified Somatica intimacy coach. What does that even mean? Well, for some people, you may know intimacy coaches to be sex and relationship coaches. I like to tell people that I'm more concerned about how you show up authentically in relationships of love. And what that means is, for me, I feel responsible to help people deepen their physical and emotional relationships. But the only way you can do that is if you really know who you are, if you really know how to express what your needs, what your desires are. Because when you do that, you're able to make space for the needs and desires of other people, and you're able to show compassion. But you will never again lose or allow somebody else's desires, wants, and needs to be placed ahead of your own. Really, really important. I think it's meaningful. It really drives relationships. But the most important relationship it drives is the one with ourselves. So that's a little bit about me. I'm Ohio native, born and raised in Northeast Ohio. I am definitely Ohio girl to my core. Since the age of 18, I've lived mostly outside of the US and for the past Ghana. I do mean you can't find me in Ohio or Accra. I'm likely on a plane and somewhere else in this world. So that's a little bit about me and my interests and why I do what I do.
She's living the life I want to live.
Yes, that sounds amazing. But I want to know, and you don't have to like go like all the way deep back in. I just want to know, like, I feel like this is your life's work, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how does one get to be an intimacy coach? Not meaning what's the certification, but at what moment did you know this is what I want to help people? This is my passion. This is what I want to kind of walk people through. Getting to know themselves in order to be in better relationships. Like, when did you know that you wanted to do this, and what prompted it? Like, what came along?
Ever since I was younger, this is the work that I've been doing. So I was a peer sex educator in middle school and high school. I was like a person you could come to for confidentiality reasons in college to talk about different like sex related things and whatnot. And so that has always been there. But when 2018, I decided to start a business, and the first event I held was around sexuality. Nobody asked me any questions, but I faced a lot of criticism. And this was an event that was held in Ghana, so it was a lot of criticism, a lot of name calling, and just a lot of all the other things. And I was like, okay, God, I know I must be going to something good because nobody's asking questions, but there's a whole lot of judgment that's happening. And so I had the event, and a friend of mine was in PR, and she got me linked with a bunch of radio programs and a bunch of evening TV programs. And so I started doing those and just really started talking about why talking about sex was important, why talking about relationships was important. And one of those series or segments, my therapist at the time heard. And she said to me, Erica, I think the things that you're saying are really important and people really need them. But like, you should go and do a training so that you aren't bringing any harm to anyone, because relationships are already vulnerable. And so you don't want it to be like whatever you're saying that impacts someone's life or relationship is harmful. And I was thinking, I don't want to bring any harm. I don't want to induce any harm. I want to help uplift people. And so that is what got me on this road and path of, okay, how do I do this? How do I uplift people and not bring harm? How do I even recognize when harm is existing? What does that look like? What does that mean? And so that took me down the road of how do I make this official, quote unquote official, right? How do I actually bring myself into a market instead of just being an quote unquote advocate. But how do I say I am the person? And so that's when I started looking for certification programs and found one and was able to go through it and really now understand the difference of just like good speech and harmful speech, or understanding trauma in life. And the other bit for me is like, in doing all of this since I was younger, you know, a quote or thing that they always say in my family is like, you boo, like just be you boo. And that was always important because I felt like everybody around me, like my peers, and you can see with teachers and dance instructors and coaches, everybody was kind of looking for the influence of other people. And so they would take on an off mask, right? They weren't showing up authentically as themselves. And then I also realized that there's so much messaging that we get as we grow and evolve that takes us away from who we are, who we were literally created to. So in doing this and looking for courses, for me, it was also really important to be like, how do I help people accept who they are? How do I help people understand that that quirkiness about them is their uniqueness and it's really beautiful and somebody wants it? Somebody thinks that like they're so worthy of love, even though they like squeal a little bit when they laugh. Like it's okay to do that. Like you don't have to stop doing that. And so that thread and that piece of that authenticity, like who you are, has space to exist in this world, was really, really, really important for me as I was looking to figure out a way to like, I'm trying to think of the word, like to credentialize. I know I just made up a word, but I like credentialize myself and to kind of like, you know, take up space in this space.
Okay, thank you so much for that. One of the things that stuck out is like you recognizing when you were like potentially harming people, because I feel like this happens a lot. People find something that they're passionate about, some kind of message they want to get out of the world, some kind of way they want to heal and free people, but then they don't recognize when maybe there's some steps before, or something that people need to kind of ground themselves in before they even get to what you're trying to explain them. Like you said, recognizing when harm has been harm, when you harm someone, like would it, because I feel like a lot of people don't know this. Like I don't tell me about how you knew you could be harming people. What does that look like, that you could have harmed those people that you potentially did that workshop where your heart was in the right place? Can you expound on that?
Yeah, I love this question because it is something I don't think we actually evaluate when we think we're showing up from a place of elevation, when we're showing up from a place of trying to help people. So an example that I like to give is there's a gentleman in Ghana who is heavily in the sex and relationship space. And a lot of what he says is full of shame. So if you are a single woman and you have a child and you had that child out of wedlock, the first thing he says to you is, well, why were you even having sex before you got married? You know, you brought this on yourself and blah, 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 blah. And for him, it's like, because he wants to show up from this Christian perspective and then da, 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 da. And it's like, whoa, that is so harmful. This person is coming to you because they see you as someone you can trust with an issue to help get guidance and advice. And instead of offering space and saying, like, you know what, like, hey, let's focus on exactly the question you're asking, you're pointing finger at the things this person has already had to deal with and likely are still dealing with. You are pointing out to them, you know, in your mind, from your perspective, all the wrong that they've done before you will get to what you are telling them is the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good example because I see where he was probably coming from a like you said, a Christian, you know, this is my intention, but someone who's already going through that and dealing with that, it's definitely a shameful feeling once you're telling me what I did wrong, as opposed to how I can get through what I did.
Yeah, I'm wondering
exactly.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you're like, if there's shame involved, if there's judgment involved, assumptions involved, like that's a surefire like example of how harm will be in it, and like checking your message to see if that is a part of your message, right? I would think.
Exactly. But sometimes that's also the hard part, right? Because people feel as if what they have to say deserves to be heard, right? So we aren't evaluating how our words land or impact another person receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It actually reminds me of an episode that we had where we were, opening the floor to talk about, things that we're dealing with, but then someone's response was very anti-Black, and so it was kind of like, we don't want this out here in the universe because A, it could reflect back bad on us, but then B, we don't want to seem as if we condone his thoughts. So I get it, it's creating a space to talk about something, but then treading lightly, for sure, because you do have to be sensitive to how people pick up things or perceive things, really.
Yeah, and it's also just like instead of going in with that judgment or that shame, like what you're saying about this person who showed up and was clearly anti-Black, it's like, actually, sir, like that's a sign that maybe something happened in your life. And we're saying that like things happen and you may need to go do some self-work and some self-reflection. But here we are pro-Black and there's lots of love for that, but there's also lots of love for all opinions, right? And so it's just like, it's not just about my thoughts and my opinions, but it's really about like, what are you asking for?
Yeah.
What do you need? And how can I speak to what you're asking for and what you need without it being a reflection of what I need and what I perceive you to be asking for or what I want you to ask for? So harm can come in a lot of ways there. Harm also comes in with like social media influencers who are doing a lot of clickbait. They're just saying the things because they want the clicks, they want the likes, they want the followers. But people hang on to their words, right? People take what they say to be like gospel. And it's like, actually, half of what they're saying may not be their real lived experience. It may literally just be, oh, I think this is going to get me some attention, or I think this is going to, catch the attention of this person. So, yeah, I'm going to say it. So it's like, how are you allowing yourself to be influenced? And again, for me, that ties back to that authenticity link. Because sometimes we just don't know who we are because we've been told to stifle ourselves, to hide ourselves, to that we're not important, that we don't matter, our words don't matter, all these different things, all these different messagings that are damaging to the core of who we are, that people are looking for people that represent sides of them that either they want to be or that they know they are or that they wish they could be. And so there's harm in that too, because you're still not getting to live and be who you are. And that all shows up in relationships.
Yeah, I love how that comes full circle. I mean, it sounds like you have to be very intentional about making sure you're not harming people when you're teaching them about relationships and then also being in a relationship. Like everything is related. If it's funny how you're describing how, you don't want to harm people in the messaging, but you also are trying to teach people not to harm people based off of their own trauma in relationships. It's like it's full circle. I love that.
She also said something really key of like, the example that you gave, Queen, about like, someone said something anti-Black, but then how do you still, something we've been trying to navigate, and me personally have been trying to navigate, is how do you still like hold space for people's opinion and where they are at in their life in the moment, and that also kind of speaks to like what I was speaking to in the beginning of the show, is like, I'm just in this season. I feel like I'm starting to really recognize more than ever, like my own shit and like how even my propensity to kind of like maybe not want to hear something that is like in opposite of what I'm believing or what message I'm trying to put out, but finding that balance of how do you hold space for who people are and try to give them what they need in that moment. I love what you said, like giving someone what they need in the moment. So speaking of, I feel like for me, this is like I'm really navigating, relating to myself I'm in a space of relating to myself in a different way and deepening my relationship with myself. How would you say how we relate to ourselves impacts our relationships with those around us?
I love this question. And just to like circle back real quick to the example and everything that was being said, like, you know, one thing that you can also do when you are like giving people what they want is honor their disappointment. So that person who was anti-Black that showed up, just be like, oh man, I know it sucks for you to be in a pro-Black space and to feel like you have to come here with this rage. Damn, that sucks. But guess what? You got to sit with that disappointment today because we are who we are. And look, we just gave you an opportunity to share your views and opinions. Cool. But over here, this is how we get things done. Right. So that's like, okay, that's how you feel. Cool. Sorry, it feels that way for you. But here, this is how it feels for us. And so, like, part of honoring you and honoring them is honoring their disappointment. You don't have to admit it at all. So I like to always make sure that people know that like that disappointment thing is real and you calling it out and almost showing some empathy to it. Like, oh, you in your feelings right now. Okay. I see that. But yeah, go ahead. But okay, to come back to your question though. So it's more like, it's kind of like a law of attraction thing. What you put out, or law of attraction, reap what you sow, these different laws, right? What you put out is essentially what you attract. So if you believe that you are not worthy of a partner who's going to do right by you, whatever the definition of do right by is for you, because that looks different for everyone. If you feel you're not worthy of a partner to do right, you're only going to attract partners that won't do right by you. So if your definition of do right by you is to be committed in a monogamous relationship, and you end up with a person who always cheats, somehow you always end up with the person who's looking outside, they're cheating, oh, you know, they slipped and fell on somebody else. And it's like, why does this keep happening to me? It might keep happening to you because deep down, you do not believe that you deserve a person that's going to do right by you. Uh-oh, I see something going on.
The light bulb.
All right. Well, only the so I feel like you're speaking to patterns in relationships, and I've been navigating patterns in relationships for myself personally, like I said, and I was just explaining to someone, this guy who I was seeing, and he said, I feel these feelings for you, strong feelings for you, but I'm not quite sure why my actions can't line up with how I feel about you. And I was like, oh, this ain't nothing new, story of my life. And then he was kind of like, well, who's the common denominator? Basically, like if it keeps happening, then it's you're the problem. And I rejected that notion, but I'm still also, there is a responsibility that I think I need to take in it, but I didn't think what he was saying was a responsibility I need to take in it. I think it's the beliefs, and it's oftentimes, like you said, deep down, it's also like subconscious, like we're not even aware that we actually believe it until we like get in tune with ourselves. And so it's like, what belief am I believing to be projecting or putting out my auras, giving off or whatever have you, that attracts a man who feels like, even today somebody was like, you get men who like the idea of you. I'm like, yes, they like the idea, but there's nothing after the idea. And so anyways, that's a little bit of mine.
I love this.
Yeah, and right, the first thing I would ask is like, what do you feel you're worthy of? Right? Because if you ultimately don't feel you're worthy of someone that wants more than just the idea of you, more than just the paper description of you, if that scares you, that, oh man, there could be a person out there that like wants to see me, like really know me beyond just what I'm capable of doing. Like if that scares you, that's where the evaluation has to come in. Why are you scared? Right? And when was the first time that you felt scared of that? And what this guy did with you was basically he flipped it back on you. He came and was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this way. And then you're like, oh, well, here we go again. And he's like, yeah. See, you're the problem. You're the problem, not me at all. Not me at all. It's you. It's your fault. And it's like, no, actually, bro, your actions can't align with how you feel. That's not me. That's you. And I now get to make a decision and a choice of how I want to move forward. That may be without you, because you just literally told me your actions are not going to align with your feelings, which lets me know that, maybe I'm not going to be the priority, or you're always messing around with somebody else, or you're never going to be able to do this thing that I really want, or. And so it's like, if you stay, you're allowing what they said they can't do to continue to be what they won't do. And that's where those patterns also end up coming back over and over and over and over, because it's hard to honor it, to hear it, to feel it, and to walk away from it.
That's true. That is, I love this.
Thank you.
So when you're normally, let me ask you a question. So when you're normally dealing with like couples, how do you recognize these patterns and red flags? And do you have like remedies for them normally? Or is it, like you said, sit in it, but you have to be aware of what's happening. So how do you kind of help guide them towards building a stronger, more resilient relationship with these patterns? I guess it's like
with couples, it's so hard. With couples, it's so hard because it takes time to actually see what the patterns really are, right? When you got two people in a room who are dealing with really big emotions, who really want to be heard, who are trying as much as possible to get you to pick their side, even though you're like, I'm unbiased, I'm here for love. They're like, but you heard me, right? He wrong, she wrong. And it's like, y'all wrong, we right, like can change the narrative. So when I recognize a pattern, it's easy to recognize because the speech continues, right? So with most couples, it's pretty consistent of this keeps happening. I don't feel like this. I feel like I have to keep saying this. Oh, they always do this. They never do this, right? Those words, always, never, forever, every single time. When I start hearing phrases like that, I'm looking at it, because those words are so big and they're not true. They're not true. We just happen to pick it up faster when something isn't happening that we really want to happen, or when something happens that feels really good too. We pick it up like, one time did they ever do this thing and that thing mattered so much to me and they've never done it again. So I'm looking for those types, because those are showing me patterns. But even though it's showing me patterns, it's actually showing me the trauma and wounding of the person speaking. Because why does this matter so much? Why does it matter so much that he never opens the door for you? He never opens the car door. He never opens the door when you go to a restaurant. And his response is, well, our first date, I did it. And at your dad's funeral, I did it. Okay, that was probably not the best example to use. But, and like he may be able to recount certain things. And it's like, see, so you can't say I never do it. I got examples of when I've done it. And those are probably times when the partner was really trying and really trying to match their partner and make them feel, loved and seen. But when you say words like never or, always, every time, that shows me that there's some wounding in you. There's some trauma. There's something that has happened. And this, what may seem small to the rest of the world, is huge for you. And so patterns for me often lie in the language. Ray's like, oh, wow, wow, wow.
No, yeah, only because I literally just had this within a friendship, and it really ended our friendship to an extent. I use the word always. And first of all, let me backtrack. It was a moment where I was like coming to the person to bring them like, this is how you're making me feel. This is how I feel when we do this and that. And then the person replied, and I was like, you always do this and that. And the person was like, always. And so the whole conversation derailed. And where for me, I was looking for us to be able to like kind of address like how this person make me feel, but it became about always, because my friend felt like she does the work and does a good job. Like, she's been intentional about like how she relates to me. And so for me to say always, her take on it was, then you must not be like able to receive what I'm giving you. If this is, because she said, is it always? And for me, I'm just trying, like, it's hard for me to like kind of even approach people and tell them this is how you make me feel anyway. And I was like trying to get past her, like stopping saying always. I'm like, yeah, sure. She's like, do you mean always? I was like, yeah. And I kept going on, and she was just like, oh, we obviously can't be friends. If you've been feeling like this, why are you even my friend? And that was kind of the thing in it. Derailed the whole conversation. And I just felt like she's like, if this is how you feel, then what are you doing here? So, but you are saying that is probably something, a pattern within myself that I need to address, that if I feel that what she's doing is always, and she's like, that's not what I'm intending to give you, then, or that's not what I've been perceiving that I've been giving you. You're saying that something about what that means to me is a pattern within myself that I need to address. I'm letting it all out today.
So when let's say you feel like anytime you go to her house, she always gives you water, even though you never ask for it. Or you say when you walk through the door, I'm cool, I don't need anything. And she always still brings it, right? Notice how I'm using the word. For you, in your experience, like, but you always give me water, and I say I don't need the water, and you always do it, right? For you, in that case, the pattern may not be, it's not around the word always. It could be something around maybe not feeling heard, maybe feeling like your words have no meaning on the person, because when you say there's something you don't want, they still do it anyways. And so it feels like you always do this because something in you is like, but I said I didn't want any water. Why are they still bringing this water? And so it feels like whenever you're interacting with them, you're essentially always on guard, because this wounding may get hit of your words not being your words, or you not really being heard, or them thinking they know what you need, even though you said what you need or what you want. Does that make sense? On the flip side, when people hear things like you always do this, right? Often when we hear it, when we're in an emotional and vulnerable conversation and we hear words like never, always, every time, it feels like the finger is being pointed. You, because it always starts with the you. Most times it starts with the you. See, I just said always too. I didn't mean that. Most times it starts with you. And YOU is a very powerful word when you're in an emotional conversation, because it feels like daggers. It feels like punches. Like, you always do this. You never do this. You, like, it feels like your mom pointing a finger at you. Like, you can't get it right. And what people are hearing is, you can't get it right. You're always a failure. You don't know how to show up for people. You don't love the right way. You make too much noise. You always try to be the biggest scene in the room. You take up too much space, right? They're not hearing, yo, when I come over and I say I'm cool and I don't need water, honestly, I don't need water. They're hearing, you're too much. You always make it about yourself. That's what they hear. And that's hitting on an internal wounding that they have. So in your conversation, Ray, it feels like you were trying to show up from a very vulnerable place and you were trying to share from a really authentic and tender place. But because it's already something that makes you really uncomfortable, like you did what most of us do. How many times did I just say always? And didn't even mean it in that way. It's so easy to let these words slip through when we're already in our head about the thing we're trying to get to, about the thing we're trying to make sure we communicate and say, right? And so we're not even noticing that we're saying always, never, every time. And I just did this with someone as well in a voice note. And I went back and listened to it and was like, oh my goodness, look how many times I said ever, always, never. And I had to go back and apologize in another voice note and say, hey, I was just feeling really charged and I felt like I had to get that off of my chest. I know that it's not always or, never, I know it's just on occasion and I'm feeling it so deeply right now because it's making me feel like you don't see me. It's making me feel like you don't want to be in relationship with me. That they were able to receive, that they were able to respond to. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, Erica. I love being in a relationship with you. And to hear you say that you think I don't want to be in a relationship with you, that breaks my heart because, I thought what we had was much stronger. Now we can have a real conversation. Now we've both broken down that defensive mechanism that pops up. And we've allowed ourselves to enter the real space of intimacy. We've also removed our facades because we've shown our cards, because we've shown our hearts.
It's so funny. When you say all these things and what, Ray has brought up, it reminds me of, I guess the overall topic anyway, it's the whole childhood experiences and not necessarily trauma, because I know growing up, I was always told, oh, you exaggerate a lot. Oh, you're a drama queen. And so I kind of embraced it. So when I say the words always, I'm like, oh my God, I've been waiting here forever. I do that, not necessarily thinking what the other person is experiencing when I say these forevers and always. I just like, okay, yeah, I'm always waiting on you. But it's like, you really do have to be mindful of your speech, because though I had been told I'm a drama queen and I exaggerate, I'm like, yeah, that's me. But I'm like, no, it really isn't. It shouldn't be, I guess, because then that could really make the other person feel like they're either not doing something right, or I don't know, like I don't want to come off that way. But I guess when it comes to the whole inner child and what you've experienced, like how much of it can be detrimental, because I didn't think me exaggerating would be so problematic. But when you're talking about these words, it's like, I use these words all the time, and it's not necessarily intentional to hurt someone, but now I realize I could be the problem. So as far as my speech is concerned, so I don't know. I guess it's like, what is my question, or is it more of a statement? But I see how your childhood experiences can really play a huge part on your relationships, both intimate or not.
Absolutely. And some people can love exaggeration, right? They can find it really playful and fun, and they can respond back to you with that same type of exaggeration, like, girl, stop playing, it's been 30 seconds and 30 more seconds times 10 times 30 seconds. You got 30 more seconds, let me go back to the car because I left something. Right? And then other people may laugh, but inside they're like, oh my goodness, like she never shows me any grace and I show her so much grace. And that's where tension starts to build. And before you know it, this person ain't returning your calls. They're not showing up for you the way they used to show up. And you're clueless as to why. And when you find out why, it seems or appears as if it was something really, really big. And it was like, whoa, that was just me like expressing myself. And it was how it landed on them. where it could have just been a conversation of, girl, sometimes when you exaggerate, it actually gives me a lot of anxiety. And it's like, oh my gosh, I am late. And I hate being late. And I hate that I made you wait. I'm so sorry. And then, okay, the next time I go out with this person, I'm not going to exaggerate the fact that they were like 30 seconds late or 3 minutes late. I'm going to celebrate the fact that they persevered through that traffic. They left work and we are here and we're going to have a great time together. Right? Because now you have insight into how to make that relationship thrive.
Yes.
Right? And so it's like, oh, it's those aha moments.
Wow.
Thank you. Queen mentioned the childhood and its impact. Kind of, sorry, backtracking. I didn't want to I want to sit on that childhood. I saw that you do inner child, like releasing your inner child, but I also know that you are intentional about, the messaging that we received during our childhood. So I guess I'm trying to figure out like how we release the inner child that has all the messaging, has all these experiences. Like, is it inner child something that we tap into like once like addressing those things, or is it possible to unleash the inner child? Like, what does it mean to unleash the inner child when you have so much conditioning, so many experiences that kind of oppress that inner child in you? If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And too often we are told to leave our inner child as the child, right? As your past. You don't need that here anymore. Oh, you grew up in poverty. Oh, you never knew when you were going to have your next meal. Or, oh, you grew up being the prettiest girl in the room and like, look at you, you're still so pretty. Like, none of that matters. Just show up right now as you are, as the professional woman, as the student, as the religious person or non-religious person, as the queer person or heteronormative. Just show up as you are today. Don't worry about that past. And it's like, actually, that past influences who I am today and in this moment. And so what I would tell people is your inner child is always accessible, and your inner child is always with you. So if you're at a wedding, let's just use a wedding as an example. You're at a wedding and that song comes on that you really like, that you like to bop to, but like you the guest at the wedding, you don't really know anybody else there. And you're sitting there with your, fruit juice, sipping it and kind of nodding your head in the chair. But there's something inside of you that's like, no, this is our song. Get up and move, get up and dance. That's your inner child. That is your little girl or your little boy saying, let me out, release me, let's be free. Let's feel in this moment. And we shut them down. Oh, we can't do that. We don't know these people. Oh, we have this Sheila La wedding. No. We just have to sit and bat our eyes and be really cute and posh because that's what's expected of us. Or I'm at a work event. I can't dance at a work. I can't do a line dance at a work event. I'm the boss. Let me be the boss. And that inner child is like, come on, move, just do a little bit of it, right? But that self-criticism comes up, that judgment comes up, that perception of what are people going to think of me once they see the side of me comes up. But what also comes up is hurt because, man, I really love that song and I didn't dance to it. And now I'm going back to my room and I'm like, man, I didn't have the greatest time. It was just okay. I just spent 4 hours at an okay event. And it's like, nah, you feeling that way because your child was begging you to let them out. And you said no. And the reason you said no was likely because someone's conditioning told you that at a certain point in your life, it's not okay to do childish things. Right? I'm here in Uganda. There was a music playing in the air. And I asked our caretaker, what's that music for? Because in Ghana, different sounds go with different things. One sound is for the man collecting trash. One sound is for, maybe the water truck man. One sound is like the public transportation folks calling out the city locations they're going to. And so I was like, that's a sound. I know that sound has to be linked to something. And he said, oh, it's the person who sells ice cream. So it's like the ice cream truck. And my little girl lit up so big. And she was like, oh, you have an ice cream truck and it comes around. And what does he sell? And this guy was like, oh, should we go find him? Like, how do we do this for you? And then a little bit of that, whoa, Erica, you're in a new country. You don't know this person. You just met them 5 minutes ago. Like, let them see the like side of you that's don't mess with me came. And when that came, I instantly felt deflated. Like I felt like all the joy that had just filled me was taken away and taken out of my body. And he noticed it. And he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to just keep sweeping now. And I was like, whoa, look at how quickly I shut down my little girl. When she was just excited at the sound of the song was an ice cream truck in Kampala. Like, who knew? And so I had to remind myself that we don't do that. We don't shut her down. We allow her to be excited about ice cream trucks and side roads of Kampala. And next time we gonna find the ice cream truck and we gonna get something off of it too. And we gonna take some pictures and we gonna post it because that's what my little girl wanted. And it doesn't make me less of a person. It doesn't take away anything around my profession. It doesn't take anything away from my relationships. It allows me to be me. It allows me to let my excitement shine through in ways that feel good and right for me. And so that inner child is always there, always knocking. I gave a positive side of what that inner child feels like. The not so positive side is maybe when you're at work and a question is asked and you feel like you know the right answer and you raise your hand and you speak with clarity because you're confident in what you're saying, and then you get shut down. And that feeling, maybe that stems from your heart. Maybe your heart starts racing, your palms start sweating. You feel like you want to leave the room. You're embarrassed. You feel like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? You know, am I going to lose my job over this now? People think I'm incompetent. That's also your little girl. And that's like maybe something that she or they experienced when maybe you were in the first grade or you were in kindergarten or you were at home and you were doing your homework and someone called you stupid or someone was like, what do you mean you don't know the answer to 1 + 1? And it's like, ma'am, sir, I've never done mathematics before. Like, you're supposed to be teaching me 1 + 1. It's not an automatic response. And so that's also your inner child saying, hey, I need you to come to me and to tell me that I'm okay. I need you to come to me and tell me that, like, my big, you got me. And I don't have to fear what just happened. I don't have to run away from it. That, like, I can allow myself to feel it and I can allow myself to move on past it. So your little shows up with the excitement, but also with the fear, also with the shame, also with the judgment. And so when you allow that inner child to be a part of your experience, you really start feeling. You really start allowing yourself to just like feel what it means to be you as things are happening real time.
You know, you say that, and it's actually last week I was invited to be president, what's it called? Principal for a day. And it reminds me, like, when I was there, I think we are teaching our children to suppress that inner child at a very young age, especially starting in school. Because I've seen the kids, like, you know, they're full of energy. They want to do kid things. But then it's like, no, sit down, behave, be quiet, catch a bubble, put your fingers up. Like, you know, there was just so many different tactics to stop that child from being a child. I mean, obviously, you know, as a teacher, there's so many kids in the class, you kind of got to have some type of control. But I remember one little girl out of nowhere, she was like, it was the most random thing. I found it to be hilarious, but she actually kind of got in trouble. But she was saying, like, you know, I accidentally ate this, but it's okay. I threw it up. And it was so random, but it was like, she felt like I needed to share this information. I ate this. It didn't sit with me, but I threw it up. But it was like, okay, I guess a time and a place for everything. But it just reminds me of how we are, even at that age, first grade, second grade, we're teaching these children to start, being indoctrinated into like the adult life. Like, you got to sit there, don't talk, speak when spoken to, you take those ants out your pants. And so you have to take a conscious effort to allow that inner child to be, especially as an adult, because you have, like you said, at work, school, there's so many things that teach you to grow up. Don't be fun. And it's unfortunate.
Oh, all of that. And that one phrase you said, speak when you're spoken to, children are meant to be seen and not heard. There are so many people in my life who like there's no space for them to talk. There's no space for them to say what they need to say because they heard those type of phrases or statements so much in their life. So when they speak up for themselves or when they say what they need, they also cower because, oh, no, someone's going to tell me that like my words don't matter. Someone's going to tell me that I'm not meant to be talking because that's what they heard so often as a child. And so those messages are what we internalize, right? Oh, like you were saying, Queen, about, being told, oh, you're so dramatic, you're an exaggerator. You embodied that then. Oh, okay, that's what I am. That's who I'm supposed to be. Okay, that's who I'm going to be then. So imagine being told to sit down and shut up. Imagine being told, like, get out of adult business. Go sit in the kid corner. Go be a child. Right? Or even things that I'm sure we all heard as Black women, you better eat everything on your plate. A lot of people are obese or not having healthy eating habits because of that type of messaging. And your inner child is like, oh my gosh, you just went somewhere, somebody made you a plate, they put way too much on it. I got to eat all of this because, we don't waste no food in this house.
It's making me
all
grieve.
Those messages.
I'm grieving, like, even thinking about the community and family that I grew up in and how often we're like policing children. And we're talking about inner child, like they're at the stage where this is the most prime time for them to do the things, and we're like silencing them. And I'm like grieving, thinking about all the messaging, and I've heard adults say to kids in my presence, I'm also thinking about like how you said even like, and how you're relating to someone and how like maybe you're afraid of shame or you're afraid of something, that related to what happened to you in first grade when you spoke out and got something wrong. It's making me want to like really be more aware of like my when my inner child is like kind of like popping up, because I always am aware of it, but I'm like, what is that? Like in certain situations where I'm like afraid of like speaking up, or like in a relationship or something like that, or whatever have you. And I'm like, there's like a shame, this fear of like being shamed, there's fear of all these things. I'm like, and now that you're explaining it, it's like that's the inner child too. Because I often just think about inner child as like the joy and excitement, but like also like the kind of moment where you were wounded to an extent pops up in your adulthood. That that makes me think about safe spaces. I've often said I want to find friendships that are safe spaces, work that is safe spaces. I only want to be in community in a safe space. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm starting to realizing no one's safe, nowhere's safe. We're all just kind of messed up in ways and suffering from different traumas, and there's no safe space. And what I'm realizing is like it's my responsibility to create the safe space no matter where I'm at. That's how I'm starting to look at it, because I'm like, because if I go about it in like who's safe, then I'm cutting everybody out, honestly, because no one's providing the safety that only I can provide. For me, obviously, that looks like boundaries, that looks like what I'm internalizing, what I'm aware of, and so for me, it's like I said, only I can create that safe space. So tell me if this resonates, or is this something you agree with? Well, what does it look like to create our own safe space, if that is the logic that we should go with it?
So I tell people there is no such thing as a safe space. Safe space does not exist. And it doesn't exist because we all have our own trauma, our woundings, our own lived experiences, our own understandings, our own, tornado of things influencing who we are. What does exist in this world is safer spaces. Right? And those are spaces that are trying not to do harm or induce harm. Those are spaces that have an ethic of, if I do something that's hurt you, tell me so that I can correct it. Right? Those are the spaces that are like, I want to try to show up the best way that I can for you, but I also acknowledge that I may fail you. Right? So like allyship and all of that, like, well, you can only be an ally to a certain point, because at some point it is still push against something you believe in. And so, you can allier, you can be a safer, but you are not going to be safe. So that's one thing I like to tell people. Safe spaces don't exist. Safer spaces do, because it also breaks down this idea or this conditioning that like, oh, when I walk into this room, I'm okay. All my worries can go away. It's like, actually, no, there may be somebody in that room that's harmful and unaware that they're harmful, unaware that what they're bringing to you is like causing a trigger or an activation or fear or judgment or shame, right? And it may even be when they're sharing something very vulnerable. It's having the impact on you that's making you feel unsafe. An example I like to give of this is often, if you put a Black man in a room with white women and you say it's a safe space, we're all here, all meeting for the same thing, guess what? A high percentage of them women are going to feel unsafe just at the Black body of a male in the room. So remember, just, I always tell people, like, we got to remember the messaging. We have to remember the socialization. We have to remember history. So we have safer spaces versus safe spaces. But Ray, what you're asking about, like, how do you create that for yourself? For me, I think that's created when you learn how to, like you were saying, set the boundaries, speak to your boundaries. When you learn how to share when there's been an impact that something that someone has said or done on you, when you learn how to share it vulnerably and openly. And I always tell people, you don't necessarily do that with everybody, because it's not everybody in the world that cares about you. But you want to do that with the people that you love. You want to do that with the people that you want to stay in relationship with, in relationships that matter. And so, you have to feel safety inside of your body first. If you don't feel it, if, words have been said and it makes you feel unsafe, it makes you feel like harm is present, danger is there, you to activate it to even regulate down to a place of reasoning. And so don't force yourself to resolve something right then in that moment. And so I say, have an ethic of repair, be willing to fix things as and when they happen with the people that you love, but also allow yourself to recognize and feel when something doesn't feel safe, when something does feel uncomfortable. And, the next day or an hour later, 10 minutes later, depending on how you process, ask yourself, what was really happening? What really made me feel like I gotta check every exit in the room, right? Because often, once you're not feeling it so highly, it's not vibrating at such a high level, and you've come down, your body, your mind will actually show you that one thing that was really going up and down inside of you. It will say, oh, that person had on the exact same shirt that my ex-boyfriend wore the day he broke up with me. Or, oh, that person had on a very similar cologne to the guy who pushed himself up against me without my consent at the club. Right? It may not be the words of anybody. It could be something that small that triggers something else.
Are you speaking to like the connection that you have with yourself in order to get down to the bottom of these things? Because I'm wondering if it speaks to like being connected and being disconnected. Because my real question is, what does it mean to be disconnected to self? And is this an example of, could be an example of being disconnected from yourself when you're not able to recognize how things are impacting you and why you are, you know, responding to things or people in this way?
It may be, it may not be. It's bigger. It's a bit bigger than just a simple yes or no. There are layers to that would have to be identified to really recognize if you are disconnected with yourself, or if you're dissociating, or if really unbothered by that situation. So if you are disconnected from yourself, I think oftentimes you can feel it. And sometimes that disconnection can even just come up in your stress response, right? When something makes you really uncomfortable, what do you tend to do? Do you fight? Do you flight? Do you freeze? Do you fawn? Right? So it's like, oh, this thing just happened. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. Deer in headlights. Maybe the world will just move past me. Right? That could be a way of, you know, not being in tune with not being in tune with yourself. That could be a way of like dissociating from the experience. But it's like, why is this really happening? And so I think when you start to get curious, you actually start to come back into connection with your body. But oftentimes we're shamed for doing that, right? It's like, oh, here we go again. She's taking deep breaths. Oh, here we go again. You know, I reflected on the situation. And it's just like, let them feel how they feel while you process what you have to process in order to exist in the spaces that you find yourself. So I don't want anyone to think that just because maybe they feel something less than somebody else, it means that they are not connected to their body, that they're disconnected to their body. That may not be the case. And really, one of the best ways to know it is to work with somebody that can help you move through kind of like where you're showing up and why you're showing up in that way. And another reason I'm kind of like a proponent of this, or really kind of like saying, I don't want to just say it's this or this, is because sometimes when you're starting to try to come back into connection with yourself, because maybe you thought you were disconnected, you may be disconnected because there's a deep trauma there. There's something that happened that you have pushed down and down and down. And if you unearth that in a way that, if you unearth it and you unearth it alone, you know, like you can be doing more harm to yourself. Versus if you unearth it with somebody that is capable of helping you, like, realize where you are, work through that trauma, bring you back into your body, help you really start to identify like what dissociation feels like versus what being present feels like. That creates a much safer experience for you to process kind of like what connection and disconnection feels like. And when disconnection exists, why it's existing. So just everybody be careful, because everyone's journey is very different. And we all hold things inside of our body that we may not be consciously aware of.
So I obviously, you know, being the wild child of the group, I know we've dove into the childhood trauma and the relationships, but where does sex come in? I want to know, out of everything that we've spoken about, how can you, like, let's say, like, what certain patterns could you say, oh, this person, they like to do this, so that means they may be dealing with this. Like, is it that obvious, or is it something that you kind of is it a little deeper than that? I'm curious. Like let's say the whole suppressing the inner child or not being able to feel like you can speak. How does that show up in the sexual aspect of things?
I love it. Way to bring it back in. So let's go with the example that you just gave, right? Like that whole thing of feeling like you can't speak or being told your whole life that like your words don't matter, sit down, shut up, that sort of thing. So often the traumas or woundings that we experience as a child from that inner child show up as our like desires of what we want out of sex. So if you were someone who felt silenced, if you were someone who felt like your words didn't matter, you may be really turned on by degradation, maybe someone telling you to sit down, shut up, you mean nothing, right? That might be a huge turn on for you. You might be really turned on when you feel like you're heard, right? Like, wow, this person actually really listens to me. They really want to hear my words. You may be turned on by being extremely submissive, like being told what to do, which is different than degradation, right? You're being told what to do and you do it. It's like you are now choosing, you now have the agency of choice to say, okay, I'll sit down and be quiet. I'll be a good girl or I'll be the bad girl because you asked me to be, like I'm gonna go and, drink that bottle of wine because you told me that's what you wanted. And that's such a bad girl thing to do, but I'm gonna do it because you told me to do it. So it influences your desires. It influences how you feel received by a person you're in a sexual experience with. That's one side of it. The other side of it is it may impact what you feel you are able to communicate or ask for in relationships. So if you were told that, don't speak unless you're spoken to, if you're in an actual situation, maybe you've never even had a conversation around consent because, well, they haven't brought it up. And so, I can't bring it up first. I can't be the person to talk about it. When should I tell them that I really don't like it when I just get my hair done? And then they want to like run their fingers through my hair. When do I tell them I don't like that? I guess I better not say anything. They may think I'm too bossy or too pushy. And like they don't care about what I have to say. It's okay. It's okay. Right? Or maybe somebody's too rough or too gentle or too romantic or not romantic enough. And then you don't use your words because literally your whole life you've been told your words don't matter. And so you don't know how to speak up and to ask for the things that you need, want, or desire because you never had that container for it. And then the flip can happen. And I have a couple that I'm coaching that this has happened where the partner recognizes, oh, shoot, their whole life they've been told that they can't ask for what they want. And so I want to create that space where they can, and I'm doing it, but they're so resistant to telling me. And it's like, yeah, they're resistant to telling you because they don't actually believe that you mean it. They actually don't feel safe when you say, no, really, tell me what you want. They feel like, nah, this ain't safe. You're going to use it against me. You're going to yell at me. Somehow this is going to come back and be a bad idea. So I'm just going to stick with what I know. I'm only going to, once you initiate something, I might say something. But if you don't initiate it, if you don't ask me what I want for dinner, I'm going to eat whatever you bring to the table. Or, like it's that sort of dynamic. And so when you know what you've experienced, you're really then able to be like, oh, this is why I really like being sexual partners who talk the whole time, who are like, yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, I'm going to spank your ass. Like they're loud and they use their words and are right because you feel like your words were stifled. So you really like to be with a vocal person because they feel freer with their words than you've ever felt. So there's different dimensions of what or how that desire may show up. But our traumas and our woundings from childhood are often linked to the desires that we want to feel. There is often linked to the emotions we want to feel from sexual experiences. And then that can often be linked to how we want to have the experience. So you can't speak, you're a child, we don't want to hear your words, turns into this desire of like, let's say in this case, your desire is to be heard, to be seen and heard, which translates to, I want to go on a super romantic date, but I want to be able to say everything I want. I want to go to this specific restaurant. I want to drink this type of wine. And as I'm saying these things, like my partner's actually asking me, like, which restaurant do you want to have dinner at? And I get to say, and they get to say, yeah, that's where we're going. Mm. Everything I ask for gets honored. Everything I say matters to this person, and I can feel and sense that it matters to them. And the more we do, the more they hear me, and the more they encourage me to use my words and like just share myself with them, the hotter I'm getting, the like sexier I'm becoming, the more I want them, the more I desire them. And by the time we leave wherever we are already hot and heavy because they've made me feel seen and heard. And so one way to know if that has ever happened for you is if you've ever gone on a date or been with somebody, and before you know it, like you doing things that you would have never done in public. Maybe you're making out or you're holding hands. Like it can look very different for different people, but you're doing something that would have felt risky in your logical mind. But right now it's like, I don't care that there's hundreds of thousands of people around. I don't care that somebody's recording us. Give it to me now. And that's because they're tapping on your desire. They're giving you exactly what you say, what you want to feel, and they're giving it to you in a way that like allows you to feel it and to sense it.
That makes me think about like just how I feel like more women are aware of it. I would like more men to be aware of how sex for most women, it happens a lot outside of what happens in the bedroom. Like it makes me think of a family member who says that, like, in her marriage, she is like tending to the kids, doing all the things, and like comes to the room exhausted, and her husband's waiting there trying to initiate sex. And she's like, are you effing kidding me? Like, maybe if you were like partnered up with me tackling these chores with like our kids, I would be in a kind of turned on in a way and attracted to you in that way. But at this point, I'm not turned on. I'm not attracted to you. Like I've just done all these things while you're just laying in bed waiting for me, listening to your music, in the mood. I'm not in the mood. And so, but I just don't think he recognizes that his body and him looking at giving her a seductive look is just not it's not enough to turn her on in that moment, But
it's an emotional thing.
It's
mental. It's all mental with us.
It's a lot of things. My last question was more so about like, speaking of sex, was just like, I've dabbled in pleasure, the idea of pleasure leading to more liberation in your life, like pleasure being a porter to liberation. And I feel like I still haven't gotten a grasp on what that actually looks like and feels like on a day-to-day. And so what does it look like for pleasure to increase liberation in your life? What does it mean to you?
Oh, that's a soul true question. What does it look like for pleasure to increase liberation in your life? For me, that looks like the ability to feel joy and the ability to feel love from like everything in my life, right? And it's like love, for example, for me, isn't just the giddy feeling. It isn't just the butterflies in your stomach. It's appreciation. It's fear. It's the good and the bad. It's the highs and the lows. But it's acknowledging that like all of this is all of these things are the threads that like form the tapestry of our life. And that tapestry is such a beautiful portrait that will be hung on a wall that will show the legacy of like how we showed up, right? It will show our life's work. And so, yeah, for me, that liberating feeling comes from being able to hold on to what joy and love feels like for me, and it not being or equating to what someone tells me it is or how somebody else describes it, but it's my ability to allow myself to feel, to be, to show up, to lean into, right? So in my highs and in my lows, like, is Erica here? Is Erica present? And if I can say yes, even when I say no, the fact that I can acknowledge that I wasn't there feels like I'm getting closer to that liberating factor because I'm honoring me and I'm still getting to be me. And so, yeah, for me, that's where it lies. And that's where the pleasure comes in, because it's just like, I also get to decide what feels good. And sometimes even the things that don't feel good, it feels good to know that they don't feel good.
Because, so you're saying, so when you say joy and love is the pleasure part, is what you're saying, because we get from pleasure, we get joy, we get love. So when we're practicing pleasure practices, practicing pleasure practices, that joy and love is what lead to liberation. That joy and love leads to you being more present, that leads to the liberation.
Yeah. So for me, joy and love lead to pleasure and feeling all things pleasure, because pleasure for me is beyond like the sexual element. Pleasure for me is like allowing flavor of food to burst in my mouth and not just to eat something so quickly because I'm hungry. Pleasure is like stepping outside for the first time in the day and feeling like the breeze blow over my exposed skin. Pleasure is the sunlight when it hits different parts of my body that don't get to feel the sun often. Like all of that, those natural experiences, receiving someone's words of appreciation, that's all pleasure because it is hitting on, like what you said, that joy and love. So joy and love is pleasure. And when I feel I'm able to access it, when I'm able to be aware of it, cognizant of it, that leads to liberation for me, because it's letting me know that I am in my body. I am present, I am feeling, and I am allowing. Because sometimes it's also hard to receive. So it's like, no, I'm allowing the universe to absorb into me. I'm allowing myself to feel this good energy. I'm also allowing myself to be okay with the things that don't feel great and to acknowledge that it doesn't feel great. But I know there's something on the other side of it. And that thought and idea of the other side, that faith for something that rests, taps back into that joy, that hope, that love. And that again brings out like that pleasure for what's to come. So that's what it feels like for me.
Thank you so much. That really helped remind me of the pleasure and liberation practice and kind of put it in really layman's terms for me, because I feel like I participate in a lot of that, but sometimes get lost in all what it actually means. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should definitely have a part 2, because I want to dive deeper into the sexual aspect and kind of like the cues and the signs. Because I know I had someone ask, like, can we have other people watch? And I'm like, what's wrong with you? And I know that stems from somewhere, but it's like, well, why do people need to, like, and so I'm like, I don't know. I still don't know. He's gone. But anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know I could talk about this type of stuff all day. I think it's been super enlightening. Not just from the relationship aspect, but just kind of, what it looks like to allow your inner child to do its thing, without suppressing it. And like Ray brought up earlier, it's like, the grieving of what we're doing to our children and saying to our children, because I have a child myself. So I need to be mindful of like when I'm suppressing him and just let him do his thing. Because there are times where I don't feel like being bothered. And I'm like, just sit down, just stop talking, but I'm like, oh, you really only going to be 10 once. So just take it outside at least. But Ray, did you have any other questions or comments?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know that, you do this for a living, and we are grateful that you came on here and kind of done this for free. I do want you to kind of share like where people can follow you, what any upcoming offerings that you have, but also would love for you to consider like a part 2 where we can really dive into, the topics of sex and what Queen is talking about. Like, and then we kind of talked about this trauma and this healing part, like sex, and so I don't know, just consider coming back on and we can talk about that. We would love for it to have you. But, please let us know where we can find you, what you have coming up, and all the things.
Yes, this has been fun and great. And it definitely, I told y'all that, whatever was president was going to take over. I know we had like tried to outline things, but I think this has turned out to be a really good conversation. And yes, we can discuss what a part 2 can look like. Queen, one thing that you were saying, sorry, because I think it will resonate with a lot of parents. And one question I often get is, well, how do I as a parent not inflict this harm on my child? And it's like, you can't. Like, I can't answer that. You can try as much as possible to not do all the things that happen to you, to create the spaces, to this, to that. But how things land on us as children is so different. And we can't control how our child will react to something. So even though all the enabling factors from our perspective may be there to ensure that they have the best upbringing possible, but even that can still lead to certain wounds and traumas existing. So I always just tell people, like, keep the lines of communication open with your children because that alone gives so much permission and understanding and love and growing, and it helps them just like show up as better adults, and it helps them to have what we call like secure attachment. So I'm saying that for all the parents who are like, I don't want to harm my kid. Oh my gosh, I've been telling them to, sit down and be quiet. I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like,
yeah,
when it's real, they need that too.
Especially after 5. I'm like, please just stop talking.
Right. And it may be like, all right, you know what? Actually, every night at 8:30, we are just going to open up the channels of communication. You won't tell me everything that's been happening in your little world. So I like to do that for the parents. But again, thank y'all for letting me come on. How can you find me? So my name again is Erica M. Daniel. You can always check out my website, which is www.intimacycoachingwitherica, ERICA.com. You can follow my personal Instagram page at Miss Luminary, and you can follow the coaching page at _the_love lab. And so those are the 2 best ways to find me. I'm also a teacher with the Somatica Institute, which is a California-based institute which does sex and relationship training for those who are interested in doing training for themselves and also doing training to become coaches. So I am one of 5 teachers that teaches the core training there. So you can learn more about my profile, more about my certification by also visiting the Somatica Institute website. But the best place is obviously just to hit me up on Instagram and or to visit my website. I'm here. I love helping any and everyone who's just looking for a new approach to how they do relationships and how you actually honor who you are and you show up for yourself first so that you can show up for the other people in your life whom you love as well. So yes, that's it for me.
Thank you so much. We got some little free sessions in there, me and Queen. So we appreciate you, Erica. You do that for a living, and can't wait to look into your other offerings. So stay tuned, everybody. Follow us on Instagram at Black Around the World. Look us up on any we're on YouTube. We're on all of the podcasting platforms, Black Around the World. give us a follow, give us a like, give us a rating, give us a comment, give us feedback. We would love to hear you, engage more with you. And you can find me on Instagram at amaray _, on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. We don't really use it, but yeah, where can they find you, Queen?
Just posted on TikTok like 3 days ago. So we working on it. We working on it.
The black around. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you did. Progress, baby steps.
Baby steps. But you can find me on Instagram at Queenwood_AVE for Avenue. And I'm also on Facebook, iCandy Queen Alexander. It's not fun over there on Facebook, but you can follow me.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and speaking with us and pouring into us. And yes, we will definitely be in touch. And I would say stay tuned for part 2, hopefully at some point in 2024, maybe.